Good morning, everybody, under the stars. We're going to take our time today, kind of relax. I don't really have any videos to show you, but we've got a lot of really important information to talk about. So grab a cup of coffee, and you may want to be hanging out near the coffee maker. I had to pick up a coffee maker recently. Coffee maker was on the blink, spilling coffee everywhere. But hopefully you guys enjoyed today's show. A lot of new stuff emerging. I did listen to the campaign speech by Trump last night. Was shocked to hear him mention Superman and Lincoln again in the speech, which we were kind of talking about months ago. So it's all happening. It's happening now. So what's so important about today's show? Well, we have a full moon coming up, a hunter's moon, they call it, and we haven't seen a moon like this in exactly 19 years. That was back in 2001. Now, what's so important about these moons? Well, every 19 years, moons repeat, full moons repeat in their same exact position in the sky, and oftentimes you'll have repeating eclipses doing the same things. Now, the one from 19 years ago, the full moon, did not happen on the 31st. It happened on the 1st, the very next day. And again, it's like 19 years and some change is basically the moon, the lunar and solar cycles that follow this 19-year cycle. So this is what you're getting here. So I look back in time to see what was going on near Halloween in 2001. And we're going to get into some of those headlines later on in the show. But look what was going on in 1988. Remember, 8 and 8 is very important because 8 is what's called the analemma. It's the position or the movement of the moon through the sky throughout the year. It forms a figure 8, and the sun does the exact same thing. It's called the analemma. So you see, you have an 8 and an 8. That's 88. So we call that time and space. But back in 1988, there was the film Halloween 4. And this is the psychiatrist who deals with the bad guy in this film. And basically, he goes into Penny's Diner. And inside Penny's Diner is all these pictures, or are all these pictures of Abraham Lincoln. And this is fitting in exactly to what we've been talking about. This is pretty crazy. Here's a wide shot, or here's him in Penny's Diner here. Look at all the Abraham Lincoln images there. Pretty crazy, right? This is Halloween 4. And as you can see, it released very close to Halloween in 1988. So, what's this all about? Well, we know that Lincoln is associated with evil, with moving through different dimensions, with some kind of portal possibly, or looking into crystal balls. We know that Lincoln was steeped in the occult as well as his wife was. So when these politicians keep invoking Lincoln, really what they're saying is that they are in the know, that there's something more to this than meets the eye. And that's our history. Very few people want to look at that side of history, but it is in fact the case. And so what we also did is we decoded Donnie Darko. And Donnie Darko was all about, that also released in 2001 around Halloween time. And that was all about time travel and portals and all that stuff. We also exposed the Samhain time travel ritual, in which humans commune with demons to open portals or look into the past or future to view events. Now, the Bible forbids this kind of activity. And so anytime the Bible forbids that kind of activity, that means it's real. It means it exists. And of course, Samhain ends on the 5th of November. It is in the witch's calendar. It ends on the 5th of November. And there are many, many time travel films that released on the 5th of November. So it's in effect telling us and substantiating the 5th of November and saw when and all of that. I had a picture of Penny's Diner I wanted to show you guys. I don't know what I did with it. Maybe this is it here. So we're going to look at some of these images of, maybe it's this one. Here it is. So this is Penny's Diner. This is the diner that the psychiatrist walks in. He finds Michael Myers in there, in the kitchen, behind the counter. And this is actually in Salt Lake City, Utah. The return of Michael Myers. So some of these other films substantiate this whole 5th of November thing. Let's take a look at some of those. This is Matrix Revolutions, many would argue. Remember, Neo would go to the phone. Remember the phone? Well, we're going to get into the phone and what that really means. We dug a little deeper. Found out that phones are actually, the telephone lines are actually made out of copper. Even to this day. But look at this. Here's Matrix Revolutions. There it is, the 5th of November, 2003. We also have Interstellar, which is also about time travel. Here it is here. This is a Christopher Nolan film, and it starred Matthew McConaughey, and it released on the 5th of November. So it's not just us making this up. Here's the Dark series. Again, this was all about time travel. Let's take a look at that. And look, there was a 5th of November date in the Dark series as well, in the timeline. And I found this one in the Predestination film with Ethan Hawke. He travels back to the 1970s. And interestingly, they mention Abraham Lincoln. I think I uploaded a montage on that over the weekend. But we're going to look at that like later. We're going to cover that on another show. But I wanted to mention it to you. There's November 6th. It's a day off, but you know what they're talking about because it's the 5th of November. Here's another instance of this happening as well. This is Tilda Swinton, and she played in the Doctor Strange DC Comics. Let's pull that up. This is it, Doctor Strange. And she plays the Ancient One. This came out in 2016. She plays the Ancient One. And look at this. She was born on the 5th of November. Strange looking woman. November 5th, 1960. And in the Marvel universe, it's actually Marvel, not DC, I think I said. She has an Infinity Stone, or what is known as the Time Stone. And it has the ability to alter and manipulate time. So it's like she was cast into this role in Doctor Strange. So what I'm trying to get you to understand here is that everything that you see in Hollywood, every type of entertainment, it doesn't even have to be in Hollywood. It could be commercials, cartoons that your children are watching. It's all been manipulated. It goes through a filter to fit an agenda to then subliminally program you. So what we do here is we deprogram you, right? So then after this, we found that copper was a very important component to whatever device that they're using for this remote viewing, time viewing, you can call it. And we surmise that Trump probably has such a device. And he's used it. It's no different than Abraham Lincoln and his wife looking into a crystal ball and holding seances in the White House. It's no different. It's just now the technology has evolved. And so maybe this is why Trump keeps mentioning Abraham Lincoln. And this is why he chose Pence as his running mate. Pence, the penny man from Indiana, where Lincoln was from. And he kept going back to Lincoln's boyhood home. Remember all that? There's something to this. And so then we found out that basically where all this is headed is that copper will become a very important component and play a very important role in our future technocratic prison. Look at this. In 2007, the U.S. Mint moved to ban the melting down of coins for precious metal. Apparently, a bunch of people were doing this. This was 2006, 2007. And the only reason why I found out that this happened was because I was Google searching and trying to figure out what happens to coins after they leave circulation, because we also surmised that when they reference these coins inside of phone booths, remember we found out that time travel was often takes place inside of a phone booth. With the Matrix, he would go into the phone booth, or in Doctor Who, he had a phone booth time travel machine. And we also saw in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, they would go into the phone booth to travel through time. Superman would go into the phone booth to change, basically cross dimensions, to become something else, to become his man in the mirror, his alter ego, his Janus, his Gemini. Do you see how all of this fits together perfectly if you just take the time to think about it? Pretty crazy stuff. So I was looking into this and I was like, okay, this money is inside these phone booths. Telephone line is made out of copper. Money is, most of it has copper inside of it. A lot of copper. 70 to 90% copper for most coins. The only one, the one that has the least amount of copper, believe it or not, is the penny. It only has 2.5% copper. And then it all hit me that this is about the future technocratic prison. All that copper is going to be taken out of circulation when they do away with coins, and they'll use that melted down copper for more base stations for 5G whiz. That's exactly what it's going to be used for. So it's all part of a plan, is what I'm trying to get you to understand. A plan that has been long thought out, that transcends presidencies, it transcends political parties, it transcends everything, and it's very real. So they moved to ban penny melting. It's illegal. You can go to jail. Actually, they take it very seriously. Why? Because you're basically stealing. Even though that you own that money when it's in your hands, they say you own the money, right? But you really don't. It's not yours. And they make up some silly little thing saying that this affects taxpayers when you pull money out of the circulation. That's to make people want to rat you out when they find out you're melting down money, right? But they're going to melt it down and build your prison with it. That's how all this is going to go down. So I was searching for how this melting down process happens. They say that they recycle the coins when the U.S. Mint melts them down, and then those coins go back into circulation. But where's this happening? I couldn't find it anywhere. And how is it happening? It's like a big secret. And then I continued my rabbit hole search, and I found out that copper is used in most telephone lines. Here's the history of copper being used in telephone lines. Look at this. This is actually Alexander Graham Bell. This is one of the first telephones. It looks a lot like Lincoln's top hat, doesn't it? Pulling a rabbit out of a hat. This is why you hear rabbits conflated with time travel. You always see a rabbit pulled out of a hat. That's because this is the first telephone, copper. Remember, copper telephone. So, now we solved the telephone connection to time travel. Now you know exactly why in the Matrix they call. It's always a phone call. Now we figured it out. Something about the copper. So, turns out that copper has some pretty crazy otherworldly properties. They're almost spiritual properties. We're going to get into that in a second here. This is the Wikipedia page for telephone lines. And you'll see that even to this day, they're made out of copper. So I think we solved that. Now, would we have solved that had we got hung up on other things or listened to some of the naysayers that come to this channel? I don't think so, because we would have got sidetracked. You guys, listen, there's a spirit of dissent out there, the spirit of the enemy himself, who wants to take people like me off of task by trying to dilute what we're trying to present here, or to try to, criticize the direction that the channel's going. But in the end, isn't it always justified? Isn't it always come full circle and explain to us why we spend so much time on this? Well, we just got down to the bottom of it. There's something about the copper, as you can clearly see in this show. Now, this is nuts. We're going to watch a little bit of this video. This is copper's bizarre reaction to strong magnets. There's a little video here. This will blow your mind. This is all real. This isn't fake. I'm not going to play the sound. I'll leave this in frame here so you guys can see what's going on. What you're looking at is a copper plate on the bottom, and on the top is a strong magnet. And copper seems to have a mind of its own. Now, Tesla did some experiments with this. He had like a copper egg, and he floated it on, I believe it was a magnet, and the thing started to spin. But look at this. That is a real-time video. That wasn't slowed down. When the copper approaches the magnet, or the magnet approaches the copper, depending on your perspective, weird things begin to happen. To me, this is bordering on the demonic. I know it is a magnet, but according to physics, copper has a very, very weak magnetic field. It's not supposed to react to a magnet like this, but yet something is happening that they try to explain away by the copper, I guess you call them subatomic particles, somehow aligning with as the magnet approaches it. It can sense the magnet approaching it, and they align in a certain way to absorb the impact. Here's a little experiment here. They unattach the wires here, and then the magnet slides right through the copper coil. But when they touch these two wires together, the magnet then pauses. This is crazy, you guys. See, he attaches the wires together. And watch this. That's weird. So, they still can't explain why this happens. But there it is, hiding in plain sight. Just checking the sound while you guys are live. So, what's this all about? There's more. Let's fast forward this through here a little bit. It also creates an electric field. This is how all motors, electric motors, work. They work with copper and magnets. This is everything Tesla was working on. See how when it goes through, the light lights up? Crazy stuff. Electricity is produced. Look at that. Boom. That's crazy, you guys. I've never seen anything like that. I didn't know that this happened until I started digging into this and researching this. Here he's got a magnet with copper in the middle as like a sandwich. He's moving this magnet around. And just, you can see all the different ways that copper reacts. It almost looks alive. Now, you can't even really chalk this up to a magnetic trick, because let me repeat, look at this. Copper has really no magnetic field to it. It's not like steel or metal where you could do these tricks and it would make sense. It's the way that copper is reacting to the magnet. It's sticky almost. Bizarre. So, look at this. All right. So, as we move on through today's show, we just found out that Paul Revere created America's very first copper mill, and that his father is named Apollo. Let's get into that. This is Paul Revere. Remember, he was like, the redcoats are coming, the redcoats are coming. Well, Paul Revere was very serious about copper, and this should have been the real footnote in history behind the name Paul Revere. You'll notice that his last name, Reeve, Christopher Reeve, the time traveler, Keanu Reeve, the time traveler, Kyle Reese, the time traveler. Are you getting chills yet? Because I am. I think all of these people, these actors, were named after Paul Revere because Paul Revere did something with his copper. Here is Revere Copper Company, and as you can see, it was the very first rolling copper mill in the United States. 1801. Now, there was something about this date, the day that he died, May 10th, that is just crazy. He died on Trump's mother's birthday, 94 years to the day before she was born. Let that sink in for a second. Let's look at his father, Apollo. Remember, this all goes back to Apollo because Superman is Apollo. Christopher Reeve is Apollo. He draws his energy from the sun. Kryptonite, which is basically copper, oxidized copper, is the thing that hurts him. He floats on helium, air. His father, a French Huguenot. We're going to get into that because that relates back to Trump as well. Trump Plaza is on Huguenot Street in New Rochelle. New Rochelle was based off of the name of the original Rochelle, which is in France, where all the Huguenots come from. This is crazy because I went to Rochelle in France. Went to visit my daughter there when I was there, and I wish I would have known this back then because I would have spent a little bit more time over there. Maybe gone through the little town. This is huge. This is a bombshell revelation, you guys. Paul Revere's father was named Apollo. Now, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but this is what the Holy Spirit revealed to me this morning. This is an episode from Battlestar Galactica. I'm going to put together a montage for you guys because I remember this episode. This was all the way back in 2005. In this episode, they take the arrow of Apollo and they go into these standing stones. They place the arrow of Apollo inside the standing stones, and voila, they jump through a time portal. You think I'm making all this up now? So let's go back here. Because Paul Revere, he's loaded. Remember, he died on the day that Trump's mother was born, May 10th. And this is where things get creepy. Because there is this coin. This is a real coin from 1776. And it is one of the most valuable coins ever made by Paul Revere himself. It's called the Janus copper coin. Now, what is half of 1776? It's 888. This is the founding of our country. And look at what's on the copper coin. A three-faced Janus. And according to people that have looked at this coin, what the three faces mean, they tell us, is past, present, and future. In other words, time. Here it is. Let's read a little bit about this. This is from Asylum, Heritage Auction Cataloger David Stone published an article on the mysterious Janus copper in the spring of 2018. Let's read about this. The Janus copper is among the rarest and most enigmatic coins in American numismatics. A single specimen is known, a celebrated rarity since the days of the hobby. Traditionally, the Janus copper is believed to be a privately produced pattern for proposed Massachusetts half-cent copper coinage that was never issued. This view was held sway until the 20 years ago when some people advanced the theory that the coin was a 19th century fabrication, perhaps the work of someone like Thomas Wyatt. But then they dismissed that because it was wrong. They said it happened before that time. Matthew Stickney was the first owner of the record of this coin. And then they go in here to link this to Paul Revere. Now, it says here, the only specimen of this curious pattern is the collection of Matthew Stickney, and was found with an engraved piece and some proof impressions from plates for continental paper money engraved by Paul Revere. So these are the notes on this very rare coin. If Paul Revere struck the coin in 1776 and carried it as a pocket piece for many years before his death in 1818, that would account for the coin's worn appearance. So this was Paul Revere's lucky coin. And of course, Janus is Apollo, Paul Revere's father's name. Now, on the reverse of this coin is Lady Liberty. Here it is right here. Now, in these, these pieces that they talk about, these coins, people that give their opinion on it, they try to frame this Lady Liberty as an existing archetype of the period. Right? And they try to depict it as something apart and separate from the Sol Invictus, Janus, Helios, and Mithra cult. But you really can't separate the two. The two are inextricably linked. Always have been. How do we know this? Well, here's an image of Helios right here. And you can see that this matches up very well with the Statue of Liberty or Goddess Liberty archetype. So they obviously got this from that, but again, they try to rewrite history. Liberty being basically a woman who wanted liberty. Here's another image of the coin here, more of a close-up. Look at this, the three-faced god. This one's worn down. So the plot thickens. We're on to something here. You know, if you were making something like this up, you wouldn't be able to find all these synchronicities. It just wouldn't exist. It says here, the obverse has three conjoined heads facing left, front, and right. The divided legend has stative to the left and massive to the right. The reverse has a seated representation of Liberty holding a pole in the right hand and an object in the left hand that has been described as either a Liberty cap or justice scales. Let's look to the back side here. Okay, Liberty cap or justice scales looks to me more like a Liberty cap. Maybe this is the original Liberty Bell. And the idea is for that. Now this thing down here they call a dog, but it actually looks kind of like a cat. You've got the globe, which is the lie, right? That she's sitting on. Let's keep reading about this. A globe appears in the left field. The legend Goddess Liberty follows the border with the pole nearly reaching the border between the SS. A small animal appears. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Right of Liberty's leg and the date 1776. The small animal on the reverse of this halfpenny has traditionally been described as a dog, but it does not look like a dog. At her feet sits a dog. Janus, the son of Apollo, went to Italy where he planted a colony and founded a town, which he named Janiculum. He is represented as is well known with two faces because by the ancients he was believed to be capable of relating all things of the past and revealing everything in regard to the future, hence the endowment of supernatural power. This is time travel, or looking into the past and future through a crystal ball. He was accepted by the Romans for a god, worshipped as such, and had a temple erected in his name, which is never closed except in a time of universal peace. History informs us that it was closed but 3 times in a period of upward of 700 years, during which the time the Romans were engaged in almost incessantly in war. Janus, copper. So there you go. So, what else do we have here? What is this? One of you actually came forward and said, Casey, there's such a thing as revereware. I was like, what? I looked it up. This is revereware. Look at all the bottoms are copper. Do you see how there's all of this hidden part of our reality that no one ever talks about that helps us to get down to the bottom of the truth? I don't know about you, but I'm sick of being told what's true and what's not. I want God to reveal the deeper meanings of all of this stuff. Why? Because if you don't have the truth, you'll be deceived. Plain and simple. A lot of that truth is evil and negative things because the enemy rules this world. So to simply turn your back on the truth will set you up to be deceived. Plain and simple. So this is the revereware. Copper-bottomed pots and pans. Now I'll put all these links in the pinned comment before we or after the show's over. But let's get into Tiberinus. Tiberinus, I guess is the way you pronounce his name. The god who found Romulus and Remus suckling on the she-wolves. And he was associated with Janus. Janus was his father. Now, Tiberinus means shark. And of course, there's a Tiber Creek in DC and there's a Tiber River in Rome. And I'm starting to wonder, is this the shark that's pictured on the chalkboard in I Pet Goat 2? Could they be referring to Tiberinus? Could they be referring to Janus, his father? Let me show you what we found here. I think it's here. Here it is. So, here talks about Tiberinus associated with the shark. I think this one talks about his father, Janus. Let me do a page search on this. There it is. So, here it is. Let's blow this up. Some scholars equate Tiberinus with Janus, the Roman calendrical god. The late Republic. It says here, Tiberinus was conventionally regarded as father of Janus. See? None of this is a stretch. It all connects together. Here's another one. I think we solved the shark on the chalkboard of iPet Goat 2. The origins of the god vary somewhat of Janus. One legend states that Janus was a mortal who came from Thessaly and was welcomed to Latium by Camis. The couple are said to have married, shared the kingdom, and had many children together, including Tiberius, the Tiber River god. Remember, Tiber means shark. Now, as I told you earlier, let's go back to Paul Revere. His father, Apollo, was a Huguenot. And Trump Plaza is on Huguenot Street. Let's go to that. It is right here. Huguenot Street. Can't make this up. 175 Huguenot Street. In New Rochelle. And again, Rochelle, France was where the original Huguenots came from. And this brings us back full circle to the 19-year cycle in this particular Halloween 2020. What was happening 19 years ago will be shocking to you, because much of what we're experiencing right now was happening exactly 19 years ago on Halloween. All you got to do is replace the word, let's figure out a different way to say this word. How are we going to say this word? What was happening 19 years ago? Terror schism. We'll call it terror schism. Okay, you guys know what that means. And if nobody in the chat, if someone in the chat doesn't know what that means, please help them out. Okay, because that's what we were going through 19 years ago. And if you replace that word terror schism with CV19, there you have it. Let's take a look at some of these headlines. So, the United States obviously was on the heels of Blind 11, and they had security lines and these dramatic rules of entry into all these different social events, right? That was the norm. Super security at EDGY Stadium. Here's one headline. Now, disregard the pictures. For some reason, the pictures aren't matching up with these archive stories. Disregard the pictures. But let's focus on the headline and the story. The line extended from the press gate, where everyone of any importance, from the players, the vendors, to the owner of to the president, enters Yankee Stadium. And so there were these long security lines. Remember that? What's happening right now? Same exact thing. Social events, there's a stigma attached to it. You got to follow all these rules. And so this is what was going on. Just like we have rules of distancing and masking up to do things that we used to do effortlessly in the past. Back then, they had rules like no personal items. Remember that? Backpacks. You could no longer bring a backpack into a stadium, because of the scare of all kinds of things. We had anthrax scares. So they were afraid someone was going to sneak in anthrax. Remember that? This was 19 years ago. You couldn't bring in your own food and water anymore. I remember this distinctly because I remember being upset that I couldn't go to a movie and sneak in candy anymore, because you couldn't bring in a backpack into a movie anymore and your own food and water. You couldn't bring a backpack into a fair, for instance. If you went to the county fair, no more backpacks were allowed, all because of this. This was 19 years ago. So security lines were long, and it made it a hassle to go anywhere in public where there were large gatherings. It basically began to change the large gathering dynamic that we were used to up to that point. And again, the large crowd dynamic has changed again, has it not? So, then of course, we have the Anthrax scare, where every day there seemed to be a new story. Now, these are stories from October 31st, Halloween 2001. We're also going to look at a few stories from November 1st, the next day. That's when the actual full moon was in full effect. But look at this. There was this hospital staffer that supposedly got anthrax. Remember, they kept, every day there was a new story. Oh, it's airborne. Oh, it's on surfaces. Remember, everyone was buying up all these cleaning supplies and sanitation supplies. All the people that were freaked out by this. It's happening again, 19 years later. How soon we forget. Look at a couple more of these headlines here. They didn't know where she got it. The staffer. These are all New York Post headlines. You can go to any archive and see the same thing. Bacteria. See this? How many must DIE or come within a whisker of DEATH? Can't say those words on YouTube anymore. Before government officials admit that they don't know. So there's all this fear, right? As people were supposedly falling ill to anthrax, the evil word. Here's another headline. Suspect packages still untested. Dozens of suspicious letters and parcels sent to federal offices in the Big Apple are lying around. Why is it the Big Apple is always the center for all this drama? So I tell you guys, I'd never live in a big city like the Big Apple, ever. So they got all these packages that they couldn't test for whatever reason. Remember the whole testing thing? Now here we are again. Testing, right? And then, so this lady, Gwen, fell ill, 61 years old. That just happened to be the Hebrew year of 2001. Isn't that interesting? That was 5761. I think all this stuff is coded. Most of our reality is coded. Look at this. Personal test kits hit home. Fearful Fork ordering them in droves. What are we going through right now? Home anthrax test kits could turn out to be the tickle me Elmo of our troubled time, with demand far outstripping production. ProLab, a Florida manufacturer. Ooh, I wonder if there's a connection to Trump in this ProLab. Maybe someone could get on that. Because, look, we already know these people are making money off of this. So ProLab, a Florida manufacturer of home test kits for radon and lead and water, has developed a home anthrax test kit. Of course they did. And the orders keep pouring in. We've pre-sold 4 million pieces. This is serious business, said James McDonald. So I'll look into ProLab, a Florida manufacturer, see if there's any connections to Trump making money off of the anthrax scare. And here we are, full circle again. All the testing, all that testing that's happening, they're making billions, maybe even $1 trillion. What else was going on? Look at this. Mad rush to take a shot on flu fighter. Can't disregard the pictures. They, for some reason, don't match up with the stories. Anthrax fears appear to have set off a minor stampede for flu shots. See all this programming? A doctor with 4 clinics in Brooklyn said calls have skyrocketed 1,000%. Worried patients are all running in to get the VC. 19 years ago. Halloween. What else was going on? Visa rules give sympathizers the heave-ho. So, they were tough on immigration rules. And anybody that was found sympathizing with we're going to call them terrorists, right? Your wrists, terror's wrists. Anyone that was caught sympathizing says the feds will give the boot to sympathizers and keep them from entering the country. Wow. How do you determine if someone's a sympathizer? What else was going on? Now, as I was pulling up these stories, I just couldn't believe this. So, another postman. Looks like these mail handlers. I'm shocked that isn't a headline story, that basically the mail handlers are coming down with CV-19. That would dovetail right in with all of this. People even stayed in for Halloween from this village parade. This was November 1st, the next day. This is the actual date of the full moon. Okay. Keeping thousands away from the annual Greenwich Village parade and putting a damper on neighborhood trick or treating. One police official estimated the crowd at the extravagant Halloween parade along 6th Avenue at 200,000, half the number who attended last year. So everyone was afraid to go out. Same thing's happening right now. Now, can you remember a Halloween between then and now where that happened? No, it's the 19-year cycle. They were even testing air quality in subways. It's all about the air. TA testing air in subways. The Transit Authority has been conducting air quality tests in subway stations. Tests, some of which began before the Blind 11 terrorists. So you gotta have fun with this sometimes, because it's just ridiculous how here we are under a president who's saying that everything's getting better, and you can't even say what you really mean. The mainstream news can, but we can't. So this was all what was going on, and on Halloween is when Michael Jordan decided to make a comeback. This is the first game. They billed the comeback the Return of the Wizard of Oz, because he was in the Washington Wizards, off to see the wizard. Jordan triumphantly swooshed his way back onto the court at Madison Square Garden last night to wild cheers. So this is what was going on. And they basically credited Jordan with bringing people back to basketball after Blind 11, because everyone was freaked out. And so you're beginning to see that this is all about the air we breathe. Air Jordan, the swoosh, Helios, helium. You guys, they even had stimulus checks for small businesses. Look at this. This is what President Bush was up to. Remember, he was the president at the time. Make this bigger. Economic stimulus with the National Association of Manufacturers. That's exactly what's happening right now. Lessons of liberty. Laugh out loud, LOL. Immigration safeguards. It's like we're in some kind of a matrix. Now, there's something about time that's interesting. And as you guys navigate your way through this channel and all the videos on this channel, you're beginning to see that once an event has passed, once the present becomes the past, something weird happens. I don't know what it is, but I often hear that time is an illusion. Maybe it really is. Now, even Trump himself made headlines during the full moon. What was that about? Let's take a look. Here's the headline right here. Trump grumbles as governor rolls dice. That would be snake eyes. And passes gambling bill. What was this about? Well, Trump was mad because they opened up New York to gambling, and he knew that would compete with his Atlantic City casinos. So, as you can see, everything we're experiencing right now, just given a new name, is happening 19 years later. CV19. So what is this full moon going to hold on Halloween? I don't know. Only God and the elite know. Now, we're going to start to wind down today's show with me addressing some topics that need to be addressed. Let's let this load up here. My sound check says everything came through, but if you guys had some kind of interruption, that's going to be on YouTube at this point. So what do we need to talk about today? Sometimes my Christian brothers and sisters get confused about why we're here and what this channel is all about. And I guess some people just want to focus on the negative rather than the positive. And I get that. It happens sometimes. But I don't think anybody can debate that we've been ahead of the curve on a lot of this stuff that always ends up coming out later, pertaining to the agenda of the enemy and how he's deceiving millions of Christians through Trump. And what God's telling me is that this is the most important issue at hand. And you know, if film, television, and movies is what was setting humanity up for the Trump deception, and that's what God wants me to look at right now, that's what I'm going to look at. Obviously, it's working. The whole Superman and Lincoln thing that Trump is now on, we already talked about before it happened. You guys, a lot of Christians are falling under his spell. One-time truth warriors are now deceived, hook, line, and sinker. They will vote and they will take his VC when it comes out. I guarantee you. Because he's going to stay on it. Why is he spending $1 trillion on them if he knows that a lot of people aren't going to take it? Of course he's going to sell it. He's going to keep on it. And another thing, I've never taken credit for these findings, these amazing findings that we just keep happening to find. I always give the glory to God. I give the glory to the process, to you, the subscribers. I think I probably say it so many times, you probably get sick of hearing me say it. Glory to God, glory to God. That's not just something you say that sounds good. It's the truth. There's no glory in this for me. It's actually tedious work. It's hard work. But I'm dedicated. Why? Because God gave me a gift to do this. You see, one of the things that I learned from all of the years of my particular religious indoctrination, there is a paradigm that many fellow Christians get trapped in. And what is that paradigm? It's, if you're a Christian leader and you're not quoting chapter and verse every 10 minutes, they assume that what you're talking about isn't biblically backed. But I challenge anybody to find any of the work here on this channel that conflicts with the Bible or the gospel. None of it does, because if it did, I wouldn't be talking about it. And I'm often quoting biblical passages without quoting them, because the Bible's full of phrases, concepts, ideas. And just because I don't say Genesis 5 verses 4 doesn't mean I'm not talking about Genesis 5 verses 4. Does that make sense? Not every single decode has to apply to every single chapter and verse in the Bible where it's mentioned. And see, that's the beauty of the Bible, is it's built with nested truths or meanings that repeat over and over again, just like our reality. One example that I like to use often is the law of 40. Because remember, Noah was in the rain for 40 days and nights in the flood? Well, that nests with Jesus being in the wilderness for 40 days and nights just before his baptism. So you don't have to apply every single biblical story to get the meaning of one story. And you know what? Hats off to those of you who are much more thorough than I am in relating every single decode to every single biblical concept. That's your gift. Start a YouTube channel. I'll help you promote it. But the caveat is, don't then use that platform to turn around and make it a vendetta against this channel. Believe it or not, that's happened a bunch of times since we started this channel in 2012. So I'll leave you with that. And every once in a while I have to say this stuff. I don't like talking about it, but it's almost like people think this channel is too good to be true. They're like, where's Casey getting his information? Someone must be feeding this to him. You guys are feeding it to me. And the Holy Spirit. And that might seem like a miracle. It might seem too good to be true, but it's the truth. I'm one person trying to do all this like herding cats. And just trying to keep my finger on the pulse of what the Holy Spirit is telling me to look at. You guys, I look at probably 1 to 2% of all of the information that comes in to this channel from you. In other words, what that means is I have to sift through 100 emails to find the one that God tells me, that's it. That's what you need to run down. Do you get it now? I'm just trying to give you a little snapshot into how this channel works. And I'm in a constant state of, I guess you call it meditation. Sometimes I feel like I'm not even here. Meditation and prayer, and I don't mean meditation like New Age. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm in the state. It's almost like I'm not here. It's like an out of body type of, as I'm just living in the will of God. Okay. Like I'm not afraid of death. I'm not afraid of the things that most people are afraid of. I'm not afraid what I'm going to eat, where I'm going to get money. I'm not afraid of any of those things. I'm just living in God's will in this state, right? And part of that, and that's the reason why maybe we've been so on it. I don't think we've really been wrong about too many things on this channel. And that's all God. So it breaks my heart sometimes when people get upset, or they think this is too good to be true, or they just want to call me a shill because they can't imagine that God could actually work through somebody and actually help a lot of people wake up. You guys, we're at the cusp of the final bars of the prison of our reality that's going to enslave God's children, just like in ancient Egypt. And we need to prepare for a spiritual exodus, not a physical one. There's only so much you can do in the physical. You need to be ready to resist the things that are against God, that will make you lose your salvation. Like taking a fake VC or a fake CV. So, I think what we're doing here is really helping a lot of people prepare. Why? Because it demonstrates how real the enemy's plan is and how he is going to deceive the world. And if you're against what we're doing, or find yourself constantly finding fault with the channel, or doubting, being a doubting Thomas, you need to go to God and figure out why you're feeling that way. I encourage people to read the comments on any one of the videos here and see how many more people are waking up on this channel versus other channels. Go read the comments in other channels and look at how this information is affecting people. Don't just assume that this is all bad information. Look in the comments, read people's comments. You will see a lot of people, new people coming to Christ, going, wow, this all makes sense. I want to give my life to Jesus today. You can't make that kind of stuff up either. And again, I take no credit for this. I'm just doing what God is directing me to do. I think about it sometimes. I go, God, how is it that people are so encouraged by this information? Because this is groundbreaking stuff where a person's entire reality is in question, right? Because, everybody loves Sesame Street, or everybody loves all the things you thought were just harmless things. You're beginning to understand that none of this is harmless, that it's all basically the construct of the devil. And how could this be an encouraging thing? And I think it's because when you begin to take in media of any kind, it leaves you with this sick feeling inside. It's almost like a feeling like you just got violated. And there's something deeper inside of what you just saw, but you can't quite put your finger on it. You feel like your subliminal mind is processing something, but you don't know what. But when you come here to this channel, you're able to look the enemy dead in the eye and confront that deception. You're empowered and emboldened. And you can explain to other people how they are being tricked and deceived. And the enemy doesn't want that to happen. He wants this all to stay under the radar, stay subliminal. Keep molding your mind slowly over time through media and entertainment. He doesn't want you to know what he's doing. So what he does is he'll play on people's egos, their pride, or whatever it is their weakness is, to come against this channel. And I reject that. So, anyway, we'll be back on here tomorrow. We're going to be talking about Trump's remarks on his campaign speech in Philly yesterday. And it's an eye-opener. And yes, he did mention Superman and Lincoln again. So now we know what all that means. And we'll be back on here bright and early tomorrow. I love each and every one of you. Thanks everybody for showing up. Take care and be safe.